Hey guys, so we messed up and failed to record video for the first 15-ish minutes of this podcast. So you're going to hear us talking, but you won't be able to see us. Now, for the most part, that's fine because honestly, it's better in just listening format, anyways. But if you are one that likes to watch, you may just want to skip to 15 minutes and 40 seconds. But yeah, enjoy the podcast. All right. How you doing, Carlos?
What's up, Lemac?
Welcome to Some Young Guys.
What's up, y'all?
And, we're over here trying to solve the world's problems in a podcast. And, man, do we got some problems for you today.
Oh, yeah.
We, this whole last week, not even really the last weekend, which honestly was not enough time because there's so much information. The rabbit hole goes so deep. We have been doing research into MK Ultra. I did MK Ultra. He did
Operation Mockingbird.
Yes. And both very relevant as far as what we've been discussing with, the Yuri Bezmenov interview where he's talking about ideological subversion and it's more or less mind control, but in a roundabout way, more about influencing the entire population. That's what the KGB was doing, trying to influence the entire population over a long period of time. Whereas the MK Ultra thing was more about trying to create essentially like a movie type sleeper cell.
No, yeah, definitely.
So they were trying to find a way through all of these different horrific experiments that left a lot of people really messed up and destroyed a lot of people's lives because we wanted to beat the Russians, the Soviets, in developing mind control, which they didn't really have in the way that we thought they had it. Their mind control program was nothing compared to what we were trying to do. Granted, I'm sure they were doing just as horrific experiments on people, but I didn't get that far into what they were doing really at all, aside from, of course, the Bezmenov breakdown that we did. But yeah, so let's just get right into it, I guess.
Okay.
I'll start with a basic synopsis of what MK Ultra was. And so essentially the CIA, this goes back to stuff we were doing before the CIA was really the CIA. It was the OSS. It was the operations, or what was it?
Office of Secret Services, right?
Office of Strategic Services.
Oh, there you go.
That's what it was. And that was during World War II. We founded the Office of Strategic Services because there were all of these other organizations in other countries that were doing things similar, like MI6, MI5 at the time. And that was the secret CIA, essentially, of those times for Britain, I believe. And yeah, it was really messed up, honestly. Like, there's so much information that I didn't even get to because there's just so much information to try and absorb in the course of a weekend. Honestly, if I had a month, I don't know if I'd be able to get everything.
I mean, it's a lot of crazy shit. Like, he was explaining to me, like, not only that, but also what I found the most interesting was a Unit 731.
Yeah, Japan's projects on human experimentation. That one was...
I feel like everyone that was, like, at their peak was doing that because they knew they were able to get away with it. Because I was like, it's like, who's going to stop us? Like, we're all powerful. We're all strong. Like, the Nazis did it. Japanese did it. Americans did it. America just did it, like, very low-key and called it an organization within America. That way, if something were to tail back to them, they'll be like, oh, we were just doing research. We weren't harming anyone. But in reality, we were fucking everyone up.
Yeah, so basic synopsis, MK Ultra, we were trying to develop mind control. And initially that started out as Operation Bluebird, and then it was Operation Artichoke, and then it eventually evolved into MK Ultra. And all of those predecessor projects were developing different ways of trying to control people's minds, control people's personalities, to make agents that you could control very easily. So you could, wipe their personality completely and install a new personality as if we're, a robot with software, which didn't work. None of these projects panned out in any way, shape, or form the way they had hoped that they would. They ended up getting a lot of information on how the human mind kind of works and what you can and can't do with a human mind. But at the end of the day, it's really unfortunate that these things happened, because they were doing terrible experiments, giving people LSD unknowingly. Like you would just be, walking down the street and all of a sudden you're tripping on acid. And it's comical looking back a little bit, just because like that would be, I've never done acid, but I've heard a lot of people talk about what an acid trip is like, and that doesn't sound like something I would want to go into unawares.
Yeah, I don't think I would like to do something that's like out of my own consciousness, like where I have no control of it.
Yeah.
I think that's a trip.
Yeah. Well, that is a trip,
yeah,
for sure. It's a trip. Definitely. Yeah. So let's see. It started out with the OSS, and actually what I found really interesting was that the OSS was founded, like I said, back in World War II, but it was mostly like really wealthy people that were like the elites were made in charge of this program. So there were like large oil tycoons, there were steel tycoons, like really big name people that made a lot of money, that were their children and the people that owned these companies and that were part of these elite groups. They were the ones that headed this organization because they were seen as, smart enough to deal with all of it. And then also they wanted to make sure it was their buddies that were in charge of everything.
Yep.
And on top of that, they were doing such heinous, horrific stuff that they wanted to have dirt on each other, kind of thing. So like that, if any one of them, fell off the wagon or snitched, then they all had a lot to lose, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. One of the most commonly known things that they did were Operation Midnight Climax.
Okay.
And that was the operation where they had, and this one was in the 60s, 70s. I think it was the 60s, actually, because this was during the hippie movement, the free love movement, all of that. This was where Charles Manson was actually very much involved, and he ended up, becoming a cult leader. And technically, from what I understand, he didn't kill anyone, but his followers did at his behest. So he went in. There was the La Bianca murders. There was the Tate murders that happened back in the 50s or 60s, rather. And those were, oh man, there's just so much information. It's really hard to organize my thoughts on this. But basically, Operation Midnight Climax was where they had, the CIA had these safe houses set up where they hired a bunch of prostitutes that would lure in men that were unsuspecting entirely. And these prostitutes, through various different administration methods, whether it was an aerosol spray or a laced drink or a laced cigarette or whatever, would administer LSD to these guys that had no idea what was going on. And then the researchers would just either have cameras or a one-way mirror and would just watch everything that was going on to try and see what level of compromise they could get out of these people, how much information they would be willing to give up on whatever stuff that they were working on that they shouldn't have been talking about, or to see the psychological effects of LSD, because LSD was also very new. No one really knew what LSD was or what the effects were. We all know what it is now because it's been 50 years since LSD was invented. When was LSD first synthesized?
That's crazy though. Like, now people just use it for fun, don't they?
Yeah, for the most part.
And like, what's the long-term effect of it? Like, do you?
There are a lot of people that have had psychotic breaks.
Okay.
Where they completely lose their personality, which is another thing that they were testing. So one part of the project was figuring out how to wipe a personality, install new hardware, like I was saying, or software rather. And they really only got as far as wiping someone's personality. And another thing that they found out because what they were trying to do is essentially be able to get random people, train them to take out a target, assassinate a target, and then be able to say an activation code word or whatever, and then the person would go and kill whoever the target was, but then have no memory afterwards that A, they had been trained, that they had committed this murder, who they had done it for, anything. They just wouldn't remember. They would do it, and then they just wouldn't remember anything about it, and so that they would be it'd be very unlikely that the assassination attempt could be traced back to the CIA.
That's crazy. Like, what if they do that to all of us, and then like everyone had like a secret like code number or something, and then just like you'd be like the government's property, you'd be used whenever they need something done.
Yeah, and that was essentially the goal. Like I said before, none of these projects ended up panning out the way that they had hoped, and they only got as far as wiping personalities, and that would really just make people schizophrenic. They would lose themselves. They would forget who they are, but they would also not really be able to, they weren't able to get people to the point where they would commit some act that went against their base morals. So like, I'm not someone that's going to just kill a random person for no reason.
Right.
So it wouldn't be possible to get me to kill someone without having a good reason.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't just kill someone for no reason. Yeah. Like the math wouldn't be mathing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they could get you to do something that was like mundane. So through different methods of manipulation, of suggestion, of all these different things, they even hired like a magician at one point. This like Chris Angel type magician that wrote a playbook on different sleight of hand tactics, whether it was, slipping you a pill in your drink, swiping something out of your pocket and just being unnoticed. It was just little ways of, like I said, sleight of hand to get some mission accomplished. So that was one thing that they were able to figure out, is those sleight of hand methods. They had, like I said, the magician that was training people how to do these things. He wrote a manual. I can't remember. Like I said, it was a lot of research to try and do in a short period of time.
No, for real.
And I can't remember all the names. There's so many names. I have a whole, in my notes folder, it's just so many names and different like little piece of information that, and each bullet point has, pages and pages of information to research to really get in on all of it and organize everything. But essentially, yeah, it was a mind control program that was trying to get sleeper cells. The Manchurian Candidate is what was a very common phrase back at that time, because they had heard from other countries that they were working on similar projects. Yeah.
That's insane.
It is. It really is.
I just find it funny how the fact that they had so much time to do that, like especially with was it Charles Manson?
Yeah.
Like that's insane.
What's really interesting about Charles Manson, so it's not confirmed, it's kind of a conspiracy theory that Charles Manson worked for the CIA, but Charles Manson, from childhood on, like from when he was 9 years old, he ended up in a foster home because he was born to a mom his mom was 16 when he was born. His dad was never in the picture. And he was basically in and out of different institutions, foster care, then it was juvenile detention centers, and then at one point, because he was a bit of a kleptomaniac, like to steal things, and so one of his favorite things to steal was cars. And so if you commit a crime in one state, like if you steal a car in one state and you take that car across state lines, it becomes a federal crime. Oh, shit. Because so the FBI operates in the states, the CIA is more national. Those are the jurisdictions. Ooh. So the FBI and the CIA actually butt heads on a lot of different projects that they're working on and issues that they get into, because the FBI is trying to do something, and then it turns out that these people came from Europe or Mexico or China or wherever, and so now it's CIA jurisdiction. And oftentimes these organizations don't cooperate with each other very well. It's like cliques in a high school, or different. It's honestly a lot more like fraternity houses in a college where they're competing against each other all the time for funding, for kudos on capturing whatever bad guy that they're trying to capture. And it's a lot of infighting. It's a lot of BS. Political. It's really political. That's really what it is.
Yep.
Is trying to get funding. And what the heck? For some reason, our camera just turned off. I don't know if it's been recording this whole time. One sec. One sec as we figure out this issue.
That's crazy. What happened? The government's listening.
Probably.
Like they're re-exposing us. Yeah, I don't think I was recording.
I think you're right. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, we weren't recording that whole time. So we'll have some video now. But until then, anyways, yeah, where was I? It was, what were you saying?
We were saying something about Charles Manson, how he got like picked up. Because
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So the CIA and the FBI, they butt heads a lot. And so anyways, that's besides the point. Charles Manson had, from the time he was 9 years old, he was in foster home, and then at 13 he went into a juvenile detention center, and then at 16 that's when he got picked up by the feds because he stole a car and took it across state lines. And then from that point on, he was just kind of in and out of different institutions. Anytime he would get out, he would always end up committing another crime, and his parole officer would send him back to jail. And so he spent, I think, half of his life in prison, in different institutions in the system.
Interesting.
Essentially, before he ended up being in San Francisco and then LA. Those were the two areas that he spent the most time in. LA primarily, that was when, he started this cult. They called it the family. It was the Manson family, even though they weren't actually his family members. There was a lot of sexual malfeasance, sexual crimes happening, whether it was rape of minors or like young minors or women that he, I guess you could say, is like lover boy method. That's what they tried to get Andrew Tate on, was lover boy method to seduce. Basically, it's a dude that treats a woman well, makes her his girlfriend, and then coerces her into prostitution or various different forms of bad behavior, essentially, to exploit women. That's what they accused Andrew Tate of doing, using a lover boy method to traffic women. That's what he's accused of. But basically, that's what Manson did. But he also, for some reason, he had this charisma about him, I guess, that really made him able to control these women using LSD, because he did drugs with them. He was part of this hippie movement. He had this view of he saw himself as both God and the devil. It's very interesting, very weird.
Yeah.
But he was able to get arrested, and people were like, he would get in trouble with the law all the time and then would always end up getting out of it. And so that's like the main reason that most people think that he was definitely working with some sort of intelligence agency. And that's where the Midnight Climax comes in, because he was in, the Haight-Ashbury. That's where the clinic was, the Haight-Ashbury district in San Francisco. And he was part of the Midnight Climax operation to a degree. I think he was a regular, or he helped seduce men into that program.
Interesting.
But anyway, so yeah, he had a big role in getting more people on LSD, and he had a supplier of LSD, and the specific strain that he had of LSD, I think it was like called Orange Sunshine or something like that. I've been listening to podcasts all weekend and an audiobook too, and the information kind of just jumbles together. But he had a strain of LSD that was primarily gotten from, it was like government LSD.
Interesting.
From what I understand.
Can you overdose on LSD? You know that?
Yes,
You can?
From the research I was doing, there were a couple of cases of people overdosing on LSD.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just fucking tweak out, or?
Yeah, you tweak out, you have a bad trip, and then you just die. I don't know exactly what it's like, what the symptoms were. Like, there's never been someone that, overdosed and wrote out what was going on, because the guy that first invented LSD, he took it and on accident. Actually, he got it on his fingers when he was synthesizing it, and had a trip and was super confused because he just synthesized this psychoactive drug that he was doing research on ergot. Ergot is a fungus, and it's actually attributed to the reason that the Salem witch trials happened. So when the girls in Salem were going crazy talking about witches and demons and all of that, it's believed that the whole town was tripping on psychedelics, ergot, because their bread had gotten infected with this mold. And so that's what ergot is. It's just a psychoactive chemical, and LSD is synthesized from ergot. Anyways, this scientist invented it. He was synthesizing. I can't remember exactly what he was trying to do. I think he was trying to treat like depression, anxiety, and different disorders like that. And so that's why he was doing research on ergot. And then he synthesized it, got a little bit on his hands on accident, and then had a trip. And then the CIA got interested in that after, in Operation Bluebird and Artichoke, they were using all of these different chemicals like heroin. They used marijuana at one point too. They actually used marijuana as a truth serum because it just makes you talkative, or it makes you a couch potato.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or it makes you paranoid. The results from marijuana were very inconsistent, so they didn't use that as much. But at one point, they did actually synthesize a tasteless, odorless version of THC that they could inject in food and stuff like that. So that, yeah, definitely some money in that now. Back then it was definitely not something that they wanted in the public, but nowadays that'd probably sell very well. But yeah, so
it's selling very well.
Yeah, it's selling very well now. And
everything
I don't know,
has like CBD or something, like every drink,
seriously,
everything now.
Everything does. But yeah, so they were just dosing people with heroin. What was it? What was the one that I was saying earlier? It starts with an M. I can't remember what it was called, but anyways, a lot of different drugs they were experimenting on people just to see the effects. A lot of it was just like, yeah, let's do this and see what happens and take notes. That's what a lot of this research was, whether it was the Nazis and Operation Paperclip, because that was another thing that was part of this, was bringing in Nazis after World War II.
I actually met one of those guys.
You did?
Hell yeah, at work.
Really?
He was a patient.
He was a patient from
Operation Paperclip. He himself said it, like, oh yeah, and then even his daughter that brought him in was like, oh yeah, he was all about that, because he's a chemist or whatever, and like very well known in Germany. And then he's old now, like he's like 90 something, but so he looks great for 90.
He was a patient as part of Operation Paperclip, or
no, at my job, like at work.
Oh, he was okay. Gotcha,
yeah, they brought him in for like, I don't know.
So he was one of the scientists from Operation Paperclip.
He was one of them.
Yeah, they brought in like 700, something like 700 scientists. The Russians did the same thing after World War II, and basically we just said, "Hey, you come work for us. Give us your brain power, and we will totally just get rid of your record. We will expunge your record and make it so that none of that ever happens. So you can actually get jobs here," which is pretty messed up because they did a lot of very, very horrifying experiments on women, children, babies, like really, really demonic, evil stuff. And the main reason that we hired them was just because like they did the stuff that no one here would have wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Or if they did want to do that, I'm not entirely sure we would have wanted to trust them. But nonetheless, we ended up trusting them anyways because, we hired them here.
Yeah.
And that's actually how the rocket program. That's how we got to space, is because we got, what was his name? I can't remember the guy's name that built the V2 rocket, but he was the rocket engineer because the Germans during World War II were very, very invested in building rockets for war, and then we took their scientists that were building those rockets to help us with our space race. But yeah, so Operation Paperclip, we brought in a lot of people that were doing all kinds of different chemical warfare experiments, biological warfare experiments to try and further this mind control project. And the mind control project was actually first heard of in the Church Commission back in 1975, where basically it was an indictment, a judicial hearing against all of our three-letter agencies, the NSA, the FBI, CIA, IRS. All of these different agencies were basically being judged for malfeasance by our government, by the people. That's where a lot of different things like the heart attack gun, that's where MK Ultra was first heard about in the mainstream. And it declassified a lot of different projects that we had been working on that the people were not very happy about finding out. I'm fairly certain that Mockingbird was probably brought up on there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Operation Mockingbird was one of the operations.
Let's go into Operation Mockingbird.
Really short. So basically, in 1949 to be exact, that's when this Operation Mockingbird kind of started. The propaganda, fake news, all that stuff. Kind of funny how Trump says fake news because it's kind of true in today's time. TikTok. So a lot of people nowadays don't really read newspapers. They don't really watch the news. I mean, half of us here even have cable anymore. We have mostly like Netflix and bullshit like that. And then, so what we see now is like, TikTok. He was mentioning Snapchat. What else? Instagram. You see a lot of like accounts that post about like news or things going around the world. Twitter. That's another one. And a lot of that stuff can be like fake. Prime example in today's news. Supposedly someone posted like, "Oh, this is irrelevant and like not important," but Travis Scott's concert got canceled in Egypt. Blah blah blah. Totally fake. There, people are making that shit up. And then the actual account of Travis Scott, media team, posted like, "That's not true. We're gonna have a great time out here in Egypt. And we're gonna celebrate." So that stuff like that, And then the thing is, like, once it gets like flooded with a bunch of misinformation, it just leads certain minorities or certain groups or certain people to a false information, and just start believing bullshit. And that's how minded war happens between people like left and right. They're just like, "Oh no, this is true because we heard this," and like, "No, this is true because we heard this." A lot of people like. One thing that used to piss me off with friends I used to know is that they used to get all their information and facts off of Facebook, which is like, there's no cite it for me, please. Let me show me the stats. Okay, what information do you have this to like back it up? They never did. It's like, well, this is kind of true. You can't go off emotion or feelings. So but in 1977. There was a man named Carl Bernstein that kind of started investigating certain groups like Watergate, and started exposing these big organizations. Like the CIA had a lot to do with it, the press had a lot to do with it, and even big journal companies like
New York Times, and LA Times, and all of them.
That was like a big one. There was like 25 people in the press. For 25 people in the press, that's a lot of power right there, that were influencing other politicians, and then politicians to certain senates and Congress and all that bullshit. And then the news, obviously, that just kind of affects everyone around the world politically. And they were able to influence certain journalists with money and certain material things. And then for those who didn't want to be influenced or didn't want to be persuaded, they were either killed or blackmailed. So they'll make some bullshit up and then they'll get fired for it.
Yeah.
which is sad because you kind of see that a lot nowadays too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm pretty sure, like, what's really interesting about Mockingbird, you said it was created in the 40s, 49.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting about that is that basically what I'm understanding from Operation Mockingbird, I knew a little bit about it, but not that much. And what I understand about it is basically it was formulated for the express purpose of manipulating public opinion, right? Public perception through different propaganda forms. You know, it used to be illegal to propagandize the American people.
Yeah.
It used to be illegal to use propaganda the same way that the Nazis did against the Germans, against their own populace, against the Russians, against everyone. It used to be illegal to use propaganda against the American people by the American government. And I think it was during Obama's administration that was made legal.
Interesting.
Which is, it is interesting because, like, one, this operation was formed in the 1940s, in 1949, so it's already been happening regardless of this law. So they were doing it just under wraps, right?
No, yeah. Even like, that's funny how you say that though, because we were doing that too for World War I and II. We were doing a lot of propaganda, like Uncle Sam.
Yeah, Uncle Sam, whatchamacallit, the Red Scare, all of these different forms of propaganda to influence the public to think one thing versus another and to support the American involvement in different wars, all kinds of different stuff that we've been doing under wraps against our own people.
No, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Even nowadays, a lot of like the things, Ukraine, a lot of videos that we watch.
Oh yeah.
Most of those
especially
things are like
nowadays.
Most of the videos are old. Like, dude, it's a bunch of
during COVID, I can't tell. I don't know how many different times we saw a picture of people in line at the hospital or a bunch of caskets or different things like that, different hospital beds being full, and then find out like 2 weeks later or a month later that picture that they used to expose how crazy COVID was and how many people were being affected by it. Come to find out that the pictures that they were using were images that were found months prior, years prior.
Yeah.
That weren't even at all related to COVID, just to manipulate public opinion to make people think that it was way worse than it actually was. So that's just an example of different forms of propaganda that's been used against the people, and it's a legacy of Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, I don't know, I'm not sure if you've seen that TikTok or Instagram post where all the news media kind of say the same thing.
Yeah,
and
dude.
Just kind
of
like
where
zooms
it's
out,
like a bunch of different. Yeah. That one's really good. I don't know.
Same narrative.
I want to see if I can find that real quick because that's something that people need to see.
That's kind of it right there, honestly.
Let's see. It was multiple local news stations saying the same thing verbatim. It was a 1 minute long clip. I'm gonna see if I can find that clip and put it up on the podcast so you guys can see it because it's very necessary. It's only like a minute and a half long. I'll see if I can do that in post. but it's crazy. It was like 20, 30 different news companies, local news, saying the same exact script. And if you don't see that and you watch the news and think it's all like, oh, they're catering to our local area, or each news corporation is exclusive to their own story, they all developed it. No, not at all. All of these different media companies are in bed with all the different intelligence agencies. Like Zuckerberg himself on Joe Rogan's podcast was saying, oh yeah, I was contacted by the FBI saying that, Hunter Biden's laptop was going to come out and that it was misinformation and it should be suppressed, and he suppressed it. A lot of people didn't know anything about the Hunter Biden laptop or thought it was fake news or whatever, because the information was heavily suppressed before the election. And then after the election, we're come to find out that Hunter Biden has been doing exactly all of the different things that everyone has been saying he's been doing. And it's precisely a result of being raised in a family it's pretty messed up. Like, Joe Biden is very clearly a pedophile.
Oh yeah.
Like it's kind of crazy how open he is about like just sniffing kids and like just doing weird stuff. And I used to say that to my grandma, because I was living with my grandma not that long, like a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, when all of this was going down, when he was being elected. And I was just like, he's very clearly like a pedophile. And this is right after Epstein had just been, all of the Epstein stuff came out. And I watched the documentary a couple of times. I showed that to a few different family members too. And one thing that really shook me was how little people cared.
Oh, I know.
How little people cared about the Epstein stuff coming out. And what do you think that is? Like, why do you think people just don't care that all of this really evil, like genuinely evil stuff is going on?
A lot of people saying that the reason why COVID happened was to cover that up.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Damn, is it that fucking big?
Yeah, it's just distractions, crisis distractions. Like we said before, how I can't remember what came out during the time that the whole submersible, the submarine that went underwater and imploded. We knew that it imploded pretty much immediately. Like, I think the story came out on a Monday, but on Sunday, our Navy had heard the submersible collapse, and we know what that sounds like because we've had submarines since World War II, and they've done tons of research on what different sounds are underwater, because we need to know these things if you're going to be military operational in a water scenario.
Right.
So you need to know, like, if we detect this sound, what is that sound? Mm-hmm. So we understand the sound of a submarine collapsing. And so we knew that it collapsed pretty much day one, and then we let that story run for a week. And that's what I think a lot of the alien stuff is, like the UFOs that keep coming out. Mm-hmm. Every time there's a UFO sighting or new UFO information or something crazy happening in the mainstream media, there's also something else that comes out under wraps, like Biden being investigated for the $5 million bribe deal with China. Hunter Biden saying, like, there's a conversation, a text conversation, because for some reason Hunter Biden is just really, like, he wants to get caught. That's what it seems like, because he's got pictures of him sleeping with underage girls, being naked with underage girls that very obviously look like teenagers, and then videos of him doing crack, like weighing his crack, smoking crack, pictures of that. And so there was a conversation between Hunter Biden and some Chinese business guy, and he's talking about, I've got my dad right here, right next to me. He says verbatim, my dad is sitting next to me, and if you don't have the money in the account on the time we agreed or the amount that we agreed, then some things you don't like are going to happen.
Damn.
And yeah, like he's saying, and this is all a text conversation that we've gotten from his leaked documents, and it's just crazy that people don't care.
I'm pretty sure a lot of you don't know that he's being impeached, though.
Yeah, Biden?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, yeah. It's all low-key, though. I like how it's low-key.
All
for
of it
Trump,
is low-key. I think
that shit was, like, everywhere.
I honestly think that they're trying to get Biden out of the presidency.
I fucking hope so.
I hope so, too. Retarded. There's no way. But, like, there's no way he can run another term. But he's running. He's trying to go for another term.
Running for what?
Presidency. Yeah, I know. Why is he running? Who knows? He wants to stay in power. He just can't die. He just can't let it go.
What's fuck, what's his name? Starts with a P. From Star Wars.
Palpatine.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. He really does look like Palpatine. There was one speech that he was making there was one speech that he made, and they put the audio over the scene in Star Wars Episode 3 where Palpatine is talking about like the New Order, and he's trying to get the people to give him all the power and make him the Chancellor so that they can end the war quickly. This is a scene from the third Star Wars movie. Well, third if you watch them in order. Yeah, and so this is the scene where Palpatine is like securing all the power, and all the people vote to give him the power to take over. And someone put the audio of Biden giving some speech. I think it was the one speech where he had like that red backdrop.
Oh, that's right.
And it looked like a dictator's speech. Like everyone was like, this looks really, really dictatorial, totalitarian government type. Like this was like almost a Hitler speech.
No,
like
for real,
like
evil.
Really looked like he was trying to take over. And I think they took the audio from that speech and put it over the Palpatine thing, and it just fit perfectly. It was honestly kind of hilarious if it weren't real life. It would be.
I remember when I saw that, and I was like, "Wait, what's going on here?
This?
Yeah.
What is this?
What just happened? Who signed something without reading
someone didn't read the terms and services.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just ridiculous the state that our country's in, and all of the different things that have led into it. I want to do more research on MK Ultra and Operation Mockingbird so that we can come with more concise information, be a little bit more organized. Because I think the way we did the Bezmenov breakdown was much more concise, much more informative.
Like this one's just like very deep.
It's so deep, and there's so many different connections to be made. And it's like, oh, this guy was involved with this project. Wait, he was also in charge of this.
Like
and
he was
this guy and this
that.
guy.
It's like, you know, that board where like there's strings.
Yeah, you're looking like a crazy person.
Yeah,
I was
literally.
thinking that when I was doing this research and I started it, I was like, oh man, I'm not going to be ready. Like there's too much information. I'm going to look like a crazy person trying to put all these dots together.
The whole wall is just covered in shit.
Yeah. I got this book that this dude took 20 years to write this book. It's called Chaos, and it's all about Manson. And I'm only like, the book in total is like 16 hours long. And I'm listening to it at 2 times speed. Because actually he talks kind of slow, so it's like you can actually still hear it at 2 times speed. But since I'm listening at 2 times speed, I'm about 2 hours into it. But that would be like 4 hours worth of the book.
Christ.
Yeah, it's a long book, but there's a lot of information. It's really interesting. I want to finish it and get back to a little bit more on the Manson thing, because I think later on in the book, because right now in the book it's just talking about the murders that happened, the trials that happened, and what the mainstream media said was going on. And then this guy that wrote the book going and interviewing all of these different people. And it took him 20 years to get this book done. I'm
surprised he survived. He's alive, you know.
Let me actually get the name of the book so you guys can check it out if you want to. It's called Chaos. It's by Tom O'Neill. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast. Yeah, let's see. Oh, whoops. That is not what I'm trying to do. So it's called Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. Bro, quit kicking.
I am so sorry.
But it's by...
I always fucking do that.
It's by this guy named Tom O'Neill. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and that podcast was really good, but it doesn't even begin to cover everything that happens in the book. The book is very deep, talks about all of the different things that we're talking about here and then some, especially with MK Ultra. I definitely want to finish that book, get a little bit more into it on the next podcast or maybe the one after. Who knows? But I would like to continue talking more about different conspiracies and not conspiracy theories. I want to talk about conspiracy fact. Like there's a lot of different UFOs are a conspiracy theory. Like it's a theory that our government has the UFOs and all of that. And because no one really knows, it's just like, we think this because this, and this happened. I want to get into the stuff that's like declassified. The CIA definitely did this so that we can know more about and just spread the word about all the different things that the government's been doing, because there are too many people that really just trust the government wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Which is insane to me. Like, people look at the CIA and the FBI and they're like, oh yeah, they did all these horrible things in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, but they're not doing anything now. It's like, no, they're definitely doing stuff. They got away with it back then, and they're definitely going to be doing stuff now, and we're going to find out in 50 years what they were doing.
Oh yeah. Yep. you're part of the process.
Yeah.
If you think that, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But no, like funny that you said that. It says retired Air Force pilot claims U.S. government possesses alien spacecraft, and that's like off a legitimate like page here.
Well, yeah, there's this dude David Fravor came out talking about that on Joe Rogan's podcast. He's an Air Force pilot. He saw these different craft that were moving in ways that we have no idea how they could possibly move. And I've heard some people, Tim Pool actually talks about the UFO stuff. I really like Tim Pool's podcast. He's very informative when it comes to politics, history, all kinds of different things that have happened in the United States and across the world. But because he's been in journalism since before 2008, he was covering the when the markets crashed. It was, oh my gosh, I can't remember what it's called. It was Wall Street something or something Wall Street. Anyways, but there were a bunch of protests against Wall Street when we bailed out all the banks and ended up, of course, when the government bails out banks, that means the people are paying for it because the government only has taxpayer dollars. Well, they print money, which causes inflation, which we end up paying for because now all of our stuff gets more expensive because they just printed a bunch of money to solve the problem, which doesn't solve the problem. It just pushes it out to later and makes the people pay for it. Anyways, Tim Pool often talks about like, oh, they have all these different, drones that they're propellers, and if they rotate a shell around the propeller, like they have all this technology that we couldn't possibly know about. And he's right in that it could just be that when they say it's a not a non-human craft, it could just be a drone. Like a drone is technically a non-human craft. So he's right when it comes to that. But at the same time, like, that doesn't explain how things that are completely defying the laws of physics as we know them, as U.S. Navy pilots know them, someone that's flying jets would probably know like what we are capable of, and so it's just all of this different stuff that's coming out that lately is just insane. It's crazy to think that this is the world we live in.
Yeah, it's a whole mystery.
It is.
Who knows what's beyond the Antarctica walls? The Earth is flat.
Don't get me going on that, bro. The Earth is not flat. All right. I don't even want to talk about flat Earth theory at all. It's just a waste of time.
It's
You
real,
think it's
man.
actually flat?
Oh yeah, dude. There's something beyond
You
those
do?
walls, bro.
You really do?
I seen it. Nice playing now.
Okay, good. I'm really glad you don't think the
No,
Earth
not
is actually
retarded.
flat. Good. I'm glad you're not retarded. This would be a very difficult business endeavor if you were.
It'd be like doing an interview with Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice.
You know what that is?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm thinking the movie Beetlejuice,
no,
the
no.
dude in the white
That one
and
dude.
black.
No.
Yeah, no, I know who you're talking about. The black guy. I know what you mean. Yeah, Beetlejuice is funny. For some reason, didn't he pass away already? No, he's still alive.
He's still alive.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking
did
of
he
someone
die?
else.
That'd be kind of sad.
I think the D's Nuts guy died.
No
I
way.
think that's who I'm thinking of.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
D's Nuts. I got him. I'm pretty sure he died.
Holy shit.
Can you type?
Not with one finger.
But yeah, so like to wrap it all back up towards the beginning of the podcast, MK Ultra, Operation Mockingbird, our government does not care about us. They use us to meet their ends. They need us to keep working and making them money and paying taxes to them so that they can continue doing the things that they want to do, living the lifestyles that they want to live, doing the research that they want to do that endangers a lot of people and destroys a lot of people's lives because they're experimenting on people and like just horrible things. The stuff that I've read about, whether it was Unit 731 that was actually Japan, just a small sample of the type of stuff that they were doing in Unit 731. They froze people's body parts while they were completely conscious, no sedatives or anesthetics or painkillers, nothing like that. They would like dip someone's arm in liquid nitrogen and then smash it with a hammer just to see what would happen. They would freeze people alive and thaw them out to see what would happen, like doing all kinds of horrific, terrible experiments just to see what would happen. Yeah. And a lot worse stuff than that. And then we, Americans, came in and expunged their records and let them keep living their lives just to get the information. And no accountability for those people, aside from the accountability afterlife. But yeah, so a lot of messed up stuff that people are getting away with, people in government. It's messed up. It's bad.
It's pretty fucked
up. It's really bad.
Makes me think that we're just a fucking science project for them.
Well, that's how they see us, for sure.
Basically.
That is how they see us. We are just numbers.
That's why you just have a social security.
I was just about to say that's what your social security number is. It's a number to them. We're just here to make money for them, but we can do something. We just have to know that we have the power to do something. We have to get together and make a plan and make it happen. That's what the founding fathers did. So
we should all just stop working.
I don't know about that, because you got to work to survive.
No.
Work for each other.
Yeah. I mean, just everyone just stop going to work.
There's more of us than there are of them.
Yeah.
So if we all just decide to stop paying taxes, then what? They can't arrest all of us. What, are they going to nuke their own people? They might. That's why JFK got assassinated. But that's a different story. He didn't want that to happen. Then he fired the guy that proposed the idea, and then he got killed, and the guy that got fired got rehired. So that was cool.
Job security.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, no kidding. All right, but I think we could leave it off there. This was kind of a rambling episode, not as concise as I would have liked to make my side of things. Yours was a little bit more organized. But we'll come back with more info on all the different things that are happening. Let us know what types of things you guys would like us to talk about. We do want to get back more to the masculinity side of things, men doing the things that they need to be doing. We're going to have some guests on. I've been talking to a few people that I know that would be down to come on the podcast. We'll probably end up doing a Discord call, so they would just call in on audio and just talk about the different projects that they're working on, different ways for us young men to improve ourselves, make more money, and increase our odds of being successful. And in different fields, multiple different fields. That's the main thing that I want to focus on too, is opening everyone's eyes to the possibilities of what is out there, what you can really do as far as achieving the success that you want to achieve. There's so many options. If you can think of it, you can achieve it. So.
Right.
I mean, it just requires a lot of hard work, dedication, research. You got to work hard and think hard. So, yeah, but we'll have some guests on at some point relatively soon, and make that happen.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
can't wait. I miss those days.
To it. Yeah.
When we had the
what's his name? Of guests. There was Amari.
That guy was cool.
Yeah, he was good. He was a good
and
dude. Adam. Yep. We'll definitely have Adam on again. We probably have Anthony on too.
Nice.
Because he's working on some stuff himself that I think will be good.
Okay.
Good to talk about. So yeah. All right.
Perfect. Once again, guys, thanks again for joining us and listening to our ramble about Operation Mockingbird and
MK Ultra.
That's right.
All the other horrible things that we talked about today.
I guess you look it up. Unit 731 actually surprised me a lot.
Yeah, that one's messed up. All right. Well, peace.
Catch you later.